Hi guys, welcome to your iPad lesson. Our lesson is about stop motion animation, where you'll be able to make your own stop motion video that incorporates an element of surprise. I'm Miss Walk.
I'm Mrs. Gingrich.
And I'm Miss Rushell.
So what is stop motion animation? Stop motion animation is a video process made up of a series of photos. In this series of photos, small changes are made between each photo to give the illusion that the objects or materials that you're using are moving or are animated. To give you an example, this is Tiny Circus. They are a group of stop motion animators who use a wide variety of materials to create these short films. They use paper, drawing, even people to create these fun stories. So take a look, pay attention to the different types of media used. Maybe you could incorporate some into your own project.
For your stop motion animation videos, you'll be using iMotion and working with either a partner or in a small group. Your goal is to incorporate an element of surprise into your video. This can be any sort of unexpected element, something that your viewers are not expecting. At the end of the project, you'll upload your video to VoiceThread and answer some reflection questions about it. We've created a short video as an example of what you might be doing for yours.
Our video was using Stomo, but you will be using iMotion to create your final piece.
So some things to remember when you're making your stop motion animation are to use small motions. You'll want to move your objects minimally between each frame so it doesn't look like they're jumping around. If you move an object a lot between one frame and another, you'll be able to see that jump in your final project. So remember to make small motions between each frame. Another thing to keep in mind is to keep your camera still. If your camera is moving around, that will be seen in your final product. You'll be able to see how the scene shifts between when your camera is moving. So make sure you have a good place to stand your camera while you're filming. This can be on your triangle, iPad case, or you can create an apparatus to stand your camera up. Another thing to remember is that you can add frames to add time. Say you want your character or your figure to stay in one place for a long time, you can take several screenshots of that scene so that the object stays there for a long time. Another thing is to be alert for unwanted objects. Make sure that if your hand goes into the scene every time to move the object, that you don't get a shot of your hand in the screen. So just be watching out for things in the scene that you don't want to be there. So within iMotion, the first thing you're going to want to do is find a sturdy place to hold your iPad. You can do this by having it in the stand, which holds it nicely and has the camera accessible, or you can use a series of objects to place behind and in front of your iPad to hold it still while you're shooting. To use the app, open it up on your iPad and select New Movie. You're going to want to make sure you select the manual button. That means you're doing most of the work by yourself, but the end product will be a lot nicer. Click Start, and you'll want to set up your scene and looking into the view on the iPad so that you know what you're filming. So what we're using here is a clay ball. This is just one example of an object that you could use. You can create different objects out of clay as well if you want to create little characters. So what we're doing here is we're pressing the capture button and then moving the clay ball between each scene. Notice how small these movements are so that the ball doesn't look like it's jumping across the table, but rather it will look like it's rolling across the table. We're also taking care to get the hand out of the scene before we press the capture button. It takes several pictures in order to get one cohesive video. So be patient as you're filming. When you're done filming, click Stop and double click it to stop the video. This will show you your video on repeat. You can experiment with your frames per second. 30 frames per second is the fastest your video can go, and 1 frame per second is the slowest your video can go. Decide how fast you want your video to go, and then click Export.
Another way you can shoot your video is to rest your iPad on the edge of a desk and hold it in place. Make sure it's stable before you do this. This way you can get an aerial view of whatever your objects are. Like here, we're using a piece of paper on the floor and shooting from above it. In this case, it's very helpful to have 2 people, which is why we're working in partners, so that one person can move the object and the other person can take the video. Again, remember those small movements. So when you're done, you hit stop twice, and again you can play with the speed of how fast you want your video to go.
You are first going to decide on your story. This can include any sort of narrative you want. Just make sure you remember to include an element of surprise. You're going to need to decide on what objects or characters you will need and create them. Think about how you want to tell your story and what kind of characters do you think will best tell it. And finally, find a sturdy place to set your iPad when you're actually making your video. Okay, so right now I want you guys to pause this video and discuss and just make a list of different story ideas, objects you can use, and where you think you're going to create your stop motion animation.
So remember, when you're creating your stop motion animation, use small motions, use a still camera, add frames to add time to your animation, and be alert for unwanted objects. And don't forget to incorporate your element of surprise.
At the end of your project, you'll do a short reflection on VoiceThread. So take a screenshot of this slide so that you can respond to these questions later. Explain the element of surprise you incorporated into your stop motion video. What were the challenges and successes you had with this project? And did you learn anything new?
All right, you guys, thank you for listening to our project. We hope that you have a lot of fun with it, and we can't wait to see the results.